guys, and welcome to a new FPV guide video. Today we're not going to be talking about big video drones. We're going to be talking about some of the little stuff, namely my TinyWhoop mini quad that I've had a lot of fun flying. And if you've been following me at all lately, you know we have had a Monday night fly where a whole bunch of our friends have been getting together and we've been flying in my friend James's bar. I mean, you gotta love having a friend that happens to have a bar so you can have a FPV race using mini quads in his bar. If you take a look at this thing here, you can see some of these corners here has been broken up. So basically this frame here has seen better days. And something funny happened to the antenna. Look at that, it just kind of goes all the way around, which probably does not help the video quality. One thing you will notice here is we're using a thicker plug, and that's because I'm sure if you've been flying a micro quad like this, you'll notice after not very long time it doesn't get as much speed or endurance as you're used to. So today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to grab a stock INDUCTRIX, the Horizon Hobby INDUCTRIX, and we're going to build ourselves a new micro-FPV onto this one here. There. Okay. So inside here we find the usual stuff. We have the box with some colored shells. We have no use for that. We also find the little charger, and in today's project we have no use for that. And finally we find the stock 25C completely useless battery. So we also have no use for that. But I'm going to show you how we're going to set this up. So this all can go out of the box itself. Here is the unit. And we take it off here, and now you can see it clearly. Down here is where the battery goes, right here, and here is the plug for the standard battery. But we're not going to use the standard battery, so what we're going to do is we're going to cut this and get rid of it. So let's start with that. I am going to, and by the way, the black is black and the white is positive. So, but since I don't want to make it really complicated, because you could solder it directly on down here, but I'm just going to solder it onto the existing leads. So I'm going to cut this right here. And this rubber here is very, very easy to remove. So to remove that, what we're going to do is just like grab it with a couple of fingernails right here for about maybe 5-8 millimeters. Kind of like that. And yank. Look at that. We're going to repeat that over here. There. So now that we have stripped the wires, we're going to put on one of these pigtails. Let me get that down to the camera. And I haven't had my little detail camera sitting here before, but I moved it in today so you could get close up of this teeny little quad. Now, if you notice, the plug here is much, much bigger than the original plug. And that's because we're going to be using a bigger battery. We're going to be using one of these beefy things right here. That fits right into here. Let me see if I can get it to fit right. Just like that. That is now ready to charge. And because I used one of these stick power strips that I got from Ready Made RC, it can charge both this is the original battery, and that fits right in here. Let's see if I can get it in place. There's one. But it also comes with the larger plugs for the bigger batteries. To operate this one, you literally just grab a 4S or a 3S battery, and then you just plug it in right here, and now you're ready to roll. Just like that. It's ready to charge, and it has a specific charger for each one of the ports, meaning you can charge a lot faster. And if you're wondering where to find this, I'm going to put a link down in the description. So having stripped that, and we have our longer cable right here. So let's just trim these, and we're going to cut them down to about here. So everything, because the biggest thing with micro FPVs is weight. Anytime you can save some weight, you are making progress. So here we go. Now we have, I almost pulled the pin out. There we go. A little more strip on that one. And so now we have these two. We're going to connect these two together by going down here, and I'm just basically going to wrap them around each other, counter moving. It's a little kinky. So I kind of wound up and like just rotated the wires a little bit on this so they don't fray out. However, what we're going to do is before we start, we're going to cut a piece of shrink wrap and put two little pieces on here so that when we're done, we can shrink all of this and make it look pretty and protected. So here is a bit of shrink wrap. We don't need very much. We just need like that little piece here. And I really should have a thinner shrink wrap for this, but this is all I had in my flying bag. So we're gonna have to go with what we have. And that then just gets put on here. And we slide it all the way down so it doesn't slide back up while we solder. And then for the red side, there we go. And I know some of you solder geeks out there are gonna tell me I'm doing this all wrong. I know I am. I'm doing it as good as I know how, and it seems to be working pretty good most of the time. So now I'm gonna get these wound together, and I'll show you how it looks as soon as I'm done. There. See how they're now mechanically holding together right here? The next step is of course going to be soldering. So I have my little portable solder iron and I have some solder here. I'm going to turn this on and we're just going to put it down for a second while it gets warm. We don't want to start soldering till the tip is perfectly hot because then we don't get a good solder and you get kind of a dull, not very pretty solder, and that's called as cold solder because it was not hot enough. So you want a nice shiny finish on your solder. That looks nice and warm. I'm going to touch that down right here, and then I'm going to apply some pretty liberal amounts of solder. That was actually too much, but I think that will do the trick. Now that I'm done soldering and I actually have some solder on the tip, I'm going to take this and I'm going to just tap my tip, and that got rid of the overload of solder right into this little plastic bucket. That was the bottom of the box that the INDUCTRIX came in. And did you notice how I kind of let the tip sit on the wire for just maybe 1 or 2 seconds after I finish flowing the solder on? That's so that the solder heats up and really runs in between the wires well. The next step is going to be pulling these little shrink wrap tubes down where we soldered. So I'm going to pull that down here and down over the solder. So now that I have the shrink wrap here, I'm just going to use the solder iron. A lot of people like to use a lighter or a match or something, but to save some time, I'm just going to use the solder iron, and I'm just going to stick it kind of right underneath here so that the hot air from the solder iron moves uphill, and I can get my shrink wrap to shrink. There we go. I'm going to do it on the other side too. So there we go. That was the most important upgrade to this little aircraft. Because with this power cable, you are now able to fly much more aggressively. If you look at these tips here, you can really see you now basically have a V8 instead of a 4-banger. You get so much more juice to the aircraft through this cable than you did before. So this cable alone is the #1 upgrade you want to do on your INDUCTRIX FPV aircraft or any other TinyWhoop style aircraft. Get yourself a monster plug and get it attached here. So now we're ready to fly because now we got power. The next thing we need to do is get ourselves a camera mount. So we're gonna rip the top off here. We obviously has no use for that. And again, as I said before, saving weight on this is the #1 thing you can do, so you don't want more weight than absolutely necessary on these things. So the next thing we need here is an AOI 40 channel camera. and it comes with one of these little install things. I'm going to pull this out. It also comes with a little cable. It has this teeny little cable here that, remember our conversation about these plugs being way too small? This cable is useless. So we're pulling the camera out. There is the camera. And here's an interesting thing. I would normally say get the antenna with the circular polarized like this one. However, these stick antennas, that's dipoles I suppose, no, they're just sticks really, they survive a lot more abuse, so they're much better. They survive better on these little cameras. Look how small this camera is. It's smaller than the bloody lens. And then we have the top right here. The top, you literally just remove these 4 screws here. You plug it down on the screws. I actually cut away some of the plastic out here, so that once I've cut the plastic away, I can put the camera down here, and now we're ready to play. But since I'm not a big fan of these crappy plastic shells here, I'm gonna just remove it, and we're gonna install this a simpler way that I've been using a lot. The first thing we need to do, of course, is we also have to install the camera. So I'm gonna cut this wire here. And I tend to keep this wire a little bit long because it's just easier to mess with the camera when it's not too short. However, again, the more weight you save, the better. So we're going to strip these cables again, just using the fingernail. And there we go. Now with these teeny cables here, I'm going to tin them before I try to attach them. That is, I put some solder on these 2 ends, so that all I have to do when I tap them to the board where they belong is just heat them up and they're gonna stick. All right, so the first things first, we're gonna tin these. There. So now we go right here, and we're just gonna heat it. And we have tinned it, and we're doing the same thing here. Now if you look underneath here, you can see where the power cables are attached. And black is ground, and it's always furthest out to this screw, and white is further in, that's positive. Turning it over, we have these 2 right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the red ones first, since it's not furthest out to the edge. And we're going to just stick it down right here. I hope you guys can see this, because... So I'm going to stick it right down here. And I'm just quickly melting the existing solder, and I'm tapping them onto the top. This one here I can't get down. I need to bend it a little bit. This would probably be better if I used a little plier. That is really everything. You have just made yourself a TinyWhoop micro-FPV aircraft that's going to be less than 25 grams. That is what's so amazing about it. It was incredibly easy to make, and I'm sure you realize this. I would have been done with this much faster if I was not trying to get video of it done. So here it is, and let me go ahead and show you how I've been propping it up on the one I already destroyed. The way I mounted this one, I used a little wedge, kind of like that, and I just put it down here like this, and I put the camera on top, and then I grabbed the rubber band on the one side, all the way across, and down on the other side, and the camera is installed. Super easy to install, and you want to have a bit of wedge. This is actually not really enough, because you want it up to about here, so that when you fly fast, let's see if I can. So if you let me see if you can imagine the aircraft does like this when you fly fast, and you want the camera to look up like this, so that you can still see while you're flying fast. So, but this, now we have installed the camera, and here is a less than 25 gram TinyWhoop ready to fly. That's how easy this was. Now, you can do a lot of things, and one of the things I found, if you're flying with the old battery style, you can actually cut some of the propellers and they seem to last a little bit longer. The downside with cutting the propellers is you don't get as aggressive of a punch out. Well, that was essentially a perfect ready to fly TinyWhoop. And I love how it's 25 grams, but remember the one I showed you? The motor mount was completely busted up, so they get busted really quickly. I always like to sex them up a little bit with a cooler frame. So the frame I'm going to look at today is from smrfpv.com. It comes with little shrouds and a full frame and everything. Before I show you how to install the smrfpv frame, what I'm going to hurry up and say, it's all about weight. And it's also, one of the things that's fun about these is not throwing a ton of time into it. I really love flying more than I enjoy building. So because of that, I tend to just stick to these stock frames because, you know, they work. When they break, you can pick up, you can just order online, get a box like this. It has a fresh frame. It's super easy to install, and you just literally move all the components from your broken unit to a new unit. So I just like unscrew the control board, I pop the motors out, and I pop them onto a new unit. That's all there is to it, and it's super easy. So let's go ahead and crack this thing open. And there, get this off. Again, I'll put a link down in the description. And here is what's in it. First of all, the coolest part is this beautiful, beautiful, teeny carbon fiber frame. And I haven't owned one of these before, so I still don't know how strong it is. But this is very stiff and feels a lot stronger, and we'll see. Probably a lot stronger than the stock frame, and it's going to be a lot cooler. It also comes with shrouds, just like this, and that's actually a very important part, the shrouds, because when you bump into something, you don't get stuck, and it doesn't hurt the person you hit. And that's mandatory for our Monday night flights. You have to have shrouds, and you cannot be more than 25 grams. So without shrouds, I would not let you fly this frame. Thankfully, it comes with shrouds, and let's get this put together. Here's the component pack. This is the motor sleeves. Here's some little sleeve for the screws for the control board, and finally we have the battery sleeve right here. So let's start putting stuff together. Okay. Battery sleeve. This is 3D printed, but with some very rubbery substance. Let's see how that fit my battery. That looks pretty good. I think that's how that's supposed to be, so we're going to leave that there. And I'm not big on manuals, so let's grab these 4 motor sleeves. The motor sleeves probably a little heavier than I need them to be. Let's get them in place. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we have motor sleeves, and finally we have the little screws right here. So the little screw sleeves, that didn't sound right, goes on right here. So these are coming in from below so that it keeps a little height up so that the control board flies a little higher above everything here. There you go. So now we have these. And this one here, the flanges are sticking up and is going to hold off the height for the control board. You can unplug the motors by just kind of grabbing them with the fingers, but it can be a little hard to get to. So I'm just going to use a pair of needle nose. And you kind of want to be gentle because these cables does not take a lot of abuse. So just get them out with the minimum amount of force required. There, and I keep grabbing them just by the edge like that. Now the motors are released. First of all, there's a little rubber band down here. You want to get rid of the rubber band. So you just pull the rubber bands out. I'm gonna keep those for later. And there we go. Go on the other side and just kind of grab around the blade and pull the props off. And then for the motors, be careful with the camera here, because everything is already connected. We're just pulling it apart right now. So we're gonna take this and we're gonna push on the motor, and you kind of gotta get your fingers on the other side because you like to not break anything. So I just kind of push like this. And there it goes, it comes out. And now don't just pull, because you don't want to break this power cable. Instead of putting these motors on, we're going to grab a set of new SpinTech motors. These are awesome. And I tried a bunch of different motors, and these ones here, they all get a little sketchy with the stock control board. However, these ones flies quite good with the stock control board, and you get a lot more power in your flying. So for 16 bucks, there, finally. So here's the SpinTech. They even come with a sticker. And inside, and the cool thing is that Colin from SpinTech gives you 6 motors. So if you buy 2 kits, you actually have enough for 3 motor replacements. So I usually buy them 2 at a time. And keep in mind, these motors only last so many hours because they're brushed motors. These things are also color-coded. You can see there's green and blacks. And in the left rear, you need to have a green one, and then you can alternate them from there. So as you can see, I clearly got carried away and ahead of myself, because plugging all these little blue parts in was not very helpful. It turns out what you need to do is like put the cable in here, hold on to the cable, and get your toothpick, which in this case here is this major thing that they put in the sandwiches. And we're just going to pull it in like that, and here we go. And then we just got to kind of massage it a little bit. And quite frankly, that massage is a bit of managed violence because these things are really tight. So you get them in and you just kind of push on the end. Make sure you don't break any of the electric cables, because if you do, then you're done. So then we go here, and what we do is we get the cable through the hole and down here, and you just got to kind of get them through. And once you get through this part, it gets harder right here. So this one, very, very important. You want to push your fingers in here, not out here, because if you push out on the outside, you are going to end up breaking the carbon fiber frame. So in here's where you're pushing. There you have it. Fast forward. Well guys, that is it. I got all the motors put in right here, and you can kind of see how they're in. I just can't get them all the way down, but it really doesn't matter for its flying abilities. So let's jump right onto the flight controller. It's sitting right here. I'm literally just going to pop those 4 screws out, and then I'm going to pop it right onto here, and we have moved the flight controller. Whenever you remove teeny little screws, make sure you have a little box on hand so that you can find them again. I'm just going to put it in right there. Now we haven't lost it, and we're going to go for the rest of the screws real quickly. That was the 4 screws, and the next thing I'm going to do is just put my screwdriver down and pull this one up, and here we go. We want to bring these little rubber bushings with us. Now remember, I told you we need one of the green motors like this one here in the rear left. And secondarily, I also told you that the yellow marker, that's where the power cable comes, is the rear. So we want the battery in this tray to go forward, backward, and then it comes in like this. So that is how we want this to be sitting on here. I put the first one on, that worked really good. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a green one in the rear corner, and again, pigtail comes in, And we've got to be careful with the camera. We don't want to ruin any cables. So now we're just going to scoot this one on. And we're going to scoot. Can you see this? So I'm literally just pushing the bushing down over the post. And we're going to repeat it over here. So with those little rubber bushings in place, the only thing left to do now is plunge these 4 screws back in. So just 1 second while I put screws back in this thing. Of course, the last thing we're going to do is also get this little triangle just the right place, and off goes the screws. Well, there, guys. Putting those screws in was actually harder than it felt like it should. Now, finally, let's get the camera up on top here. You'll probably notice how big this tray is. I bought this a while ago, while the average camera was a lot larger than this one. Look how much space, empty space there is here. But that doesn't really matter. We're just going to put it down right here like that. And going with my usual rubber band concept, we are going to hook the rubber band under the blue thing here, all the way over, and down under the blue on the other side. I hope that works. Look at that, just like that. So turning this over, the motor wires here just basically goes in the nearest plug after you have installed all of this. So you just kind of grab them and push them down, just like that. To be perfectly honest, some people make quite an artwork out of how they wind these cables. I just basically leave them loose and just kind of plug them in. It doesn't slow me down, so I'm not going to spend more time on the cables. I just kind of leave them here, fold them a little bit so they don't get caught in the propellers. And right here. There, look at that. We have our battery holder. We have our battery holder right here. We have the motors plugged in. We have our upgraded cable. And we have our nice little camera mounted in place. And this is a newer camera rather than the older ones that was much bigger. So these cameras are just getting smaller and smaller. These props really kind of feel loose. I'm just going to grab my pair of needle nose and I'm just going to pinch the receiver just a teeny bit. Don't go overboard here. You just want to pinch it enough that it holds tight on the shaft. So now remember, now the front propeller here, they're turning this way, so out and away, rather than normally they turn towards the center. So we put them on. That's one. And here comes the one for the other side. And one more. This goes on this corner. The reason I pinched these props a little bit was because it's such a nuisance when you're flying along and all of a sudden your picture just spins because a prop just popped off. That's such a crazy way to crash. It does make for some great video though. Alright, we got props and you can actually fly this just the way it is here, and that's probably the more appropriate way for racing. The only thing is, since we fly indoor, ducts are mandatory. We are flying indoor and around people. So we're just going to grab some of these ducts here and just slide them right on. So that comes over here. Look at that. That spins perfectly. That's a really big deal. If you just blow on the props, you know if they're going right. And like I have dogs at home, and one of the things that constantly happens is I end up with dog hairs in my props. And that will slow you down, so just blow on the props. And if they don't spin freely, you should just pull the prop up and remove whatever hair and whatnot may be in the prop. There we go. We are basically done and ready to fly. The only thing we need now is to toss a battery in, put some goggles on, and go flying. And with that, let's see if we can get some flight out of this. This goes right here, and there we have it. Very cool little mini quad right there. It's working. Now, of course, there's one thing left I didn't do here, and that could be why it feels a little heavy. Let's find out. So this here is a voltage checker. Let me show you. I'll grab another battery. So basically, this voltage checker here, I get them. They're very cheap. They come from ready-made RC, and you just basically slide the battery in right here. And here we go. This is 4.20. So this battery is charged. And on the other end, they have the same plug that fits a stock battery. So here's one of those more crappy stock batteries. Let's push it in. And this one is 3.9, so it's definitely not ready to fly. So one with 4.0 sounds good. So that's on this end here. I'm just plug it in, and 4.0 is now my reading. And that, we're gonna go fly. The last thing I'm gonna do today is I'm gonna show you what we did for the bar races. Because as you can see on the video here, on the bar races, we put a whole bunch of rings together. This is like hula hoop rings, just like this one. And we 3D printed a couple of things. Up here we made one. You can see this hole on this. So we just made a clip that fits on the hula hoop ring, and it goes on a photographic light stand. The other thing we had to print was one little guard. See, when I click on that, you should maybe see the colors going on and off. This here protects the power button, because otherwise they keep going on and off, and it was quite a circus when I was driving anywhere, because in my back seat I would have this never-ending starting and stopping of lights. And finally we came up with a kind of a hack here. Check this thing out. This is how we put them on the tables. We use the thing, and because there's an Asian kitchen at the restaurant, where did my chopstick go? This one. So this one here is made with a number of little chopstick holes. What it does is you simply take 4 chopsticks and just jam them right through here, and now you've got legs. It's ready to go. So that is how we really quickly, it takes us about 15 minutes to set up the racetrack for the Whoop the Bar events. You can also follow the events on Drone Squad, which supports the race tracker. Just go to Drone Squad and LA TinyWhoop. That is LA TinyWhoop on Drone Squad. And naturally, click down in the corner here and make sure you subscribe, because we have more videos. And next week, I'm heading off to NAB in Vegas, which is going to have all the new broadcast-related drones for 2017. So stay tuned for more videos, and make sure you chime in down here in the comments.